Hello, it's Alex and welcome to Hey Little Thrifter. I'm back with another Nightmare Queens video where I talk about vintage horror from the 1970s, 80s and 90s written by women, and today I'm going to be talking about Now You're One of Us by Asa Nonami. Now You're One of Us by Asa Nonami was originally published in the original language of Japanese in 1993, and it wasn't until more recent years that it was translated into English and published in that language, but the fact that it originally came out in 93 means it totally fits as a Nightmare Queen novel. This particular edition that I read was translated by Michael Volek and Mitsuko Volek. This is about Noriko. She is in her 20s and she's set up to meet a man called Kazuhito through a matchmaker type situation, and she's very hesitant about it and not really into this whole matchmaking thing, but she goes to meet him out of a favour and ends up really liking the guy. He's handsome and charming and seems to really like her too. So they do end up getting married, and as is customary, she moves in with him and his family, and there are 8 members of the family already living in the house that Noriko moves in with. So of course there is her husband and his parents, so Noriko's in-laws. There is her husband's brother and sister. There are the grandparents, and then there is the great-grandmother. And at first Noriko is quite overwhelmed by the situation of being married and moving into this large family, but the family are really lovely and they welcome her with open arms and things really do seem perfect. But of course, if we're reading horror, we know that nothing is as it seems, and Noriko soon starts to have some suspicions that something isn't quite right. I really enjoyed this one. This was such a great read. I really enjoyed the writing style and the fact that we are in Noriko's head for the whole story, so we are experiencing all these things as she does. I was hooked into this one from the first page. It opens on a scene with Noriko after she has been married and has moved into the family house, and she ends up meeting a neighbour from the local area, and I won't go into detail, but it does set off that feeling that something isn't quite right, and the story goes from there. So we get a bit of backstory about Noriko and how she and Kazuhito met and how that relationship developed, but otherwise the story is mostly told in the present day and kind of unfolds in real time. And as she is settling into her new life and basically getting to know her new family and being a part of that family, she experiences some strange goings on that really make her suspicious that there's something sinister going on, and that behind this perfect happy facade the family members are up to something terribly wrong. So she tries to find out a bit more about what is going on here, but at the same time she feels really bad about having these suspicions and for doubting her family. So there's a real conflict here for Noriko on whether she has reason to be suspicious and whether she should find out exactly what's going on, or whether she should just drop it and trust that her family are really as nice as they seem to be. I thought all of the characters were really well written. Noriko was definitely a believable and relatable character, and the members of the family were all well fleshed out and believable. And while there are quite a lot of characters to get to know, they do all have their own unique characteristics to set them apart from each other. And I thought the great-grandmother especially was a really fascinating character. She's like this really elderly, frail lady. She's almost 100 years old, but she is the matriarch of this family, and she's very highly revered, and she's very enigmatic. And even though she has this old and frail exterior, she's very powerful as the matriarch of this family. She is known by everyone as Great Granny, which I thought was awesome, and she's very well known in the local area, and there are a lot of visitors that come to their home to visit Great Granny, and this is one of the reasons that Noriko becomes weirded out and suspicious, as she doesn't know why all of these people are coming by. So yeah, I thought that was all really well done, and yeah, Great Granny was a great character. I thought this was a really great mix of psychological horror with a touch of gothic horror, and the fact that it has a contemporary setting added like a unique element to that combination. So yeah, I really liked that. It's very atmospheric. There is an air of mystery to the story as well, as we don't really know what's happening, and it is slowly uncovered by Noriko. And yeah, there's just this real sense of unease throughout the whole story that was really well done. I had heard this compared to Rosemary's Baby by Ira Levin, and yeah, definitely agree with that. I can definitely see that this was inspired by Rosemary's Baby, and there are even some story beats here that are practically identical to Rosemary's Baby, but it still manages to take that inspiration and do its own thing with it, rather than it just feeling like a retelling or even a rip-off. It definitely, yeah, does enough of its own thing for it to really work as its own story. I did notice one thing that I hadn't seen anyone else notice, although I'm sure I'm not the only person that spotted it, but there is a scene where Noriko is speaking with her brother-in-law, and there is an anime character mentioned called Honeybee Hutch, and I can only assume that that was a reference to Hutch, who is Rosemary's friend in Rosemary's Baby. If not, it was a really random thing to include here, but yeah, I thought that was a really cool little nod to Rosemary's Baby, and where, yeah, I assume the inspiration for Now You're One of Us came from. And yeah, if you are thinking this is just a retelling of sorts of Rosemary's Baby, it isn't. It definitely goes in a different direction. It does its own thing for sure. So needless to say, I really enjoyed this one. I rated it 4 stars out of 5, and I definitely recommend it. It has a lot of great elements here. Like I said, it's got psychological, horror and gothic, and we have, of course, a family with a dark secret. I don't want to say too much more about this one and go into too much detail and give any spoilers, because I absolutely recommend you check it out for yourself if what I have said so far sounds interesting to you. And before I wrap this up, I do want to mention that I do think the cover makes sense once you've read the book. But yeah, that's all I'm going to say. So those were my thoughts on Now You're One of Us by Asa Nonami. Let me know if you've read this one. I would love to hear your thoughts. Thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully I will see you again in my next video.